Hey, welcome to Cool Identity. I am your host, Fred Patterson, and we are going to be covering the installation of an identity manager engine from Micro Focus's product suite for their identity governance and administration product. Now, previously, the product was known as just Identity Manager, and with its evolution into the identity governance and administration marketplace, Gartner has taken off the Magic Quadrant, and they're putting more into documentation. I forget the terminology that they're using, but pretty much any identity management product in the future, you'll probably be able to find guidance under identity governance and administration. And so we're going to use some different terms such as identity access manager, identity manager, eDirectory, Micro Focus, NetIQ, and even DirectXML. So if you've been around the block for a while and you're familiar with this technology, great. If not, we'll be able to get you up and going and started. The Micro Focus solution is a well-established product with great development tools to get your identity management solution up and going where it needs to be to get you the security and the functionality you need to help automate your user accounts and just get everything where it needs to be to help ease administration, get your policies in place, and to be able to help sustain and maintain your growing user base. So enjoy the ride, and we're going to get started off with our environment being running on VirtualBox. So, this is help to introduce you to the product, how to get it installed. Now, if you're familiar with the product already, you can go ahead and skip this. If you haven't worked with containers before, you may want to go ahead and stay with this so that you familiarize yourself with the container installation. Otherwise, another piece to keep in mind here is what are you going to be running on it? What hardware do you have? Is this a personal environment on a laptop, on a different box? If so, depending on your hardware requirements, it may or may not be best fit for you to use my config standard. So you may have to modify it a little bit. My workstation is an old Z800 HP workstation. It is a workhorse. It's got, I think, 12 cores, which I know it's not a lot nowadays, but it's got 64 gig of RAM. And that's the huge piece there, is the cores and the gig of RAM helps me be able to build out environments. Now, what we're going to be doing with the environment, we're going to be using Oracle's VirtualBox to install Ubuntu as a virtual box on a Windows 10 host machine. And then we're going to run the containers on the Ubuntu host. And so, why Ubuntu? Well, the Red Hat, I wanted to stay away from the CentOS and the OpenSUSE Linux. As much as I love the product, I haven't seen a huge population out there using it in the workforce. A lot of people are Red Hat. And so my next step is, okay, Ubuntu is pretty common. A lot of people are playing with Ubuntu, they're familiar with it, and it's going to be an easy get-go. But as far as doing this on OpenSUSE, well, guess what? The container is built on OpenSUSE Leap version 15.1, if I remember the version correctly. So, OpenSUSE, yeah, you bet, run with it, go with it, have fun. But if you're not as familiar with it and you're familiar with Ubuntu, we'll get you up and going. So if anything, this will hopefully be a good guide as far as steps to get up and going. one of the biggest caveats is make sure your host file is correct before you configure the containers. I've ran into a couple hiccups, and a lot of times it's because my host file wasn't right. I skipped over that piece. So the hardware, I've got a box with quite a few cores, quite a few gigs of RAM, and so what I'm doing is I'm building out my virtual box to be based off of having multiple containers under that. Now, maybe it doesn't make sense for you to have one virtual box with multiple containers. Maybe it makes more sense in your environment, depending on your configuration, where you have multiple virtual boxes of with containers spread across them. So maybe you've got a virtual box for your engine, and then another virtual box for your identity application. And maybe that's also running the container for OSP, etc. So hopefully this will get you into a good startup. A lot of it's going to depend on your familiarity. But the nice thing is that with this course, if you have no idea what Microfocus is, what NetIQ is, what identity management is, all you need to know is VirtualBox, Ubuntu, both are freeware. And then you need to get a copy of Identity Manager and be able to, as a container, and deploy it. And so hopefully this gets you a good basis for getting started in the identity space if you're not already there, or to familiarize yourself with containers if you already have experience, etc. So with that, let's get started so that you can have some hands-on and run from there, right? All right, so in my VirtualBox, if you go to About, I'm running VirtualBox 6.1. You can download it from Oracle and install it. I'm not going to go through the install with you. That's up to you to get going. You may choose a different virtual software out there, and you just need to be familiar with it, with whatever it is, whether if it's VMware or whatever, right? Now I already have an IAM box running Ubuntu that I've already been working with, and so I'm just going to leave that powered off. I'm going to do a new one, and I'm going to call it IAM2, and I'm going to choose Linux for the OS, and I'm going to scroll down and find Ubuntu and 64-bit. Okay, now the memory size, I've got 32. Or no, sorry, I have 64, and so I can go as high as like 32, right? To fill, that's a lot of memory. And so I can go ahead and run with that and scale it. And then my disk space, I'm going to chomp out a good 145, 150 meg. Or gig, sorry, not meg. Oh, imagine. Those were the days. Alright, so I've got that base configured, but I need to go into my settings, and I'm going to set a couple things, okay? So my processors, I'm going to put it to 6 cores, because I have 12, and my display I'm not going to play with. My storage, I need to point to my Ubuntu ISO 20.04, and then I need to go down to my network, and I am going to use a bridged adapter, and my share folders. I'm going to add a share folder here. Let's see, as you guys get to visualize my environment, right? Alright. And I'm going to choose IGA, containers 4.2. Alright, and I'm going to choose auto mount. And that's just the nice thing about this with adding the share. I'll be able to copy my files that I've downloaded, my containers, in an easy way. It's already on that mount point. I can then copy it to my desired location. Okay. All right. So I think that has us going there. I'm going to go ahead and hit start. Now it's going to kick up a window that I'm only going to be able to see on my other monitor. And all it's doing is it's saying, hey, what do you want to use to boot? And so I'm just pointing to my Ubuntu ISO. So that's something that I thought wouldn't be, as I already pointed it as a mount point for the ISO. I was a little bit surprised that prompted me, but I think that's unique to Ubuntu. Anyway, it's coming up here. And so once it's up, we're going to go ahead and go through the install pieces for Ubuntu. And part of that process is we are going to have it update as well. And so rather than you guys watching the install, I will be pausing it here and there so that you're not doing file copies with me, right? You're not doing the actual install. You can see that on your own box. All right, so here we go. Got my little cursor there, my spinning wheel, and there's the Ubuntu background. Got a little audio there that sounded, and now I'm going to choose install Ubuntu. I'm specifying English, continue. I'm basically keeping defaults. I'm doing a normal install and a download updates. And I think we have a couple more prompts, and then I'll let you guys continue on your own. All right, yeah, I'm gonna erase the disk just because I'm choosing new allotted space. No big deal. Then I'm gonna hit continue. Alright, choosing my time zone, my name. I'm going to say it's IM. Sometimes I like to capitalize this. My username is lowercase. It's a good password. Woohoo! And I'm going to hit continue. Alright, it's copying files. I'm going to go ahead and pause it here so you don't have to watch the install, and I'll be back with you shortly. Feel free to be doing the install on your end and resume it as needed. Alright, so the installation has completed. And now for a restart. It's going to prompt here if the installation media has been removed. Now, part of the VirtualBox, without the guest, the VirtualBox guest, what's it called? The guest editions being installed yet. We're not going to get a full window. It's going to be a smaller size window, so we're going to do some prerequisite installations or patching to get those guest services on the box. And once we have the guest services installed and the box restarted, we should be golden to continue on with the installation. But we'll walk through the prerequisites here. But you should have that documented so you can go ahead on your own if you haven't already done so. Alright, so let's go ahead and log in. Alright, so I'm going to go down here and find terminal. I'm going to add it as a favorite. I'm going to go ahead and run it. Then I'm going to type in a few commands here. I'm going to do a sudo apt update. It's going to refresh our repositories. Then we're going to do a sudo apt upgrade. And I'll pause it while it's doing that. So I did have to hit the continue with the Y as far as extracting the templates, and we're good to go. Alright, now with that done, with the update, we are now going to, or the upgrade, we're going to do a sudo apt install net-tools. That's just going to help us with the host server or the Ubuntu box as far as looking at ports. And then we're going to run a sudo apt install open jdk-8-jre. That's going to help us with Apache Directory Studio. Then once that finishes, we're going to install the headers, which is required, the Linux kernel headers, which is required for VirtualBox guest editions. Sudo apt install build essential dkms Linux headers. It's gonna pull in the headers. And then once that's done, we can go ahead and install the VirtualBox guest editions. The nice thing about that is that we then have copy-paste functionality, drag and drop functionality, and we also have the ability to have a larger size screen, and I'm sure there's other pieces as well. So it looks like this may be close to being done. Okay, with that done, we're going to go ahead and go up on our VirtualBox window, choose devices, and choose insert guest editions. It's going to prompt us for a run. We're going to go ahead and run that and put in our password. This shouldn't take too long. Alright, so we can go ahead with that completed. We're going to close out the window. We're going to do an init 6 to restart the box. Alright, it is rebooted. Now we should be able to drag our window. And we see it expand. Previously you wouldn't have been able to do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and skip these pieces. And no, they don't need to be notified. One thing that I like about Ubuntu is it has easy install for Visual Studio Code, PyCharm, and a bunch of other applications for developers and other common pieces that people will install. So good job, Ubuntu. I like it. All right, so I'm gonna right click and choose display settings. I'm gonna change my scaling so that it's considerably larger. I'm gonna apply that. I'm gonna keep my changes. I don't know if it actually did anything there. Huh. It moved it. That's fun. Alright. Just moving some windows around. Alright. Close this. And let's see how that looks. That looks okay for now, at least. Alright. So with that done, we are going to open up Firefox. We're going to download Apache Directory Studio as well as the NetIQ Designer, or the Micro Focus Designer. So I'm going to do search. That's on its way down. I go to dl.netiq.com. I can go to my patches. The reason why I'd go to patches, I won't go to patches. If I go to patches, I can get the 4.8.2 container, because 4.8.2, if I do the install of the 4.8.0 containers, I'd then need to upgrade. And so you can, with the 4.8.2 containing everything and it being a very easy install, my recommendation would be to proceed with going to patches to get the 4.8.2 container. I've already downloaded them on my box, so I don't need to worry about that. I won't show you that process. But for Designer, I need to go into Identity Manager, and I need to choose 4.8, submit. Then I need to click on 4.8, and then it shows you what you can download. And so I'm going to go ahead and pause this, log in, and then we'll download that. Okay, now with being logged in, I'm going to download the Identity Manager 4.8 Designer for Linux. As you can see, there is a 4.8 containers. They have updated the containers to some degree. The installation steps, I believe, are different as well for the 4.8 versus the 4.8.2. So that's why I'm recommending you go to the patches section, download the 4.8.2 containers, download. In fact, let's go there now so that with my login we should be able to get there with it still downloading. So if you go to patches, so I'm already logged in. Under the patches, I can choose the product as being Identity Manager. I'm going to choose 4.8. Okay, and if you choose 4.8, it will show you all the patches for 4.8.2. Or all the patches. And so if you look down here, we have a 4.8.2 patch, but then we also have the Identity Manager Containers 4.8.2. So that's where you download the 4.8.2. So if you don't currently have an account it'll prompt you to log in, and you can choose to create an account. I don't recall if you have to have an entitlement to download them or not, and where you can just install it, or if you have to talk to sales first in order to have access to the demo. Let's do a quick search just for giggles. Looks like there is a trial. You can register for a free trial. So I'd recommend that you register for a free trial, and they will contact you with that. They should get you an account, or you can sign up and specify your account ID, something to that effect. Alright. So hopefully that gets you in the right direction if you don't have access to the software. And I'm in the process of downloading the designer. I've already downloaded Apache. And I'm going to go ahead and extract here for Apache. And I'm going to go ahead and open. And run. Now you may want to proceed to move this, extract it to a different location. I just did it under the download, and it is based off of Eclipse, so it has a familiar look and feel if you're familiar to Eclipse, and Designer is as well. And so you'll have two Eclipse platforms that are extracted out, one for Apache Directory Studio as well as for the NetIQ Designer or the Microfocus Designer. I say NetIQ and Microfocus interchangeably, as Microfocus is a practice that the product is listed under or was listed under, and Microfocus is the main organizational company that purchased Attachmate, which Attachmate at one time purchased NetIQ. So just merger and acquisitions, but the product, even though it has gone through a series of companies, it is a very well mature and very well respected product, and highly recommend it. Alright, so I'm not going to do anything with Apache Directory Studio at this time. We don't have a directory to connect into currently, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. And where are we at? Looks like Designer has downloaded. So we are going to extract Designer. And now we should be able to run the install. Oh, that's interesting. It opened it. Wasn't expecting that. Let's see if we can close that. My mouse is... So it opened it in the editor, which is interesting. Force quit. This is where I meant it to open. Alright, so it's launching the installer, and so I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of the screens. This is a familiar installer that you're going to see with other pieces. For accept, you drag down, you hit accept, of course, after reading it, right? And I like that location, so I'm going to hit next. Yes, I want it to create my shortcuts. And then I'm going to do install. I'll pause it here until it's done installing, and we'll go through the various steps for the upgrade. This is the 4.80, so we will patch it up to 4.82. very simple. It's just a matter of clicking for the most part. Alright, so after the install, it pops up designer release notes. I'm going to go ahead and close that. I close my browser. And I'm going to hit done. And then if I go down here, I can see the designer for Identity Manager. I'm going to add to favorites, so I can pop it over here. I'm going to go ahead and start it up. Now while that's starting up, I'm also going to create a directory for the containers under /iam. In fact, I'm going to change that to IGA. Why IGA? Just it's the more common name that the product is moving towards. It's identity governance and administration, where previously it was more of classified as identity and access management. So we'll use the newer terminology. Alright. So we get this prompt for designer as far as where we want our workspace. That's fine. I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to continue on. Now designer came up. It has a welcome screen. You can go through these pieces here to learn more about it. I highly recommend that you go to www.netiq.com/documentation. That's the current web page, but you can also, it may be moving, but they should redirect you if so, and you can choose Identity Manager and look at all the related products there. And I'm going to there it is. So as part of the install, it talks about missing files of the JRE, and then it's going to go ahead and place those files for you and restart it. So we're going to hit OK, and it's going to start up again. Alright, so it's restarted. It's asking about the workspace. I'm going to go ahead and say don't ask again. Sometimes it asks anyways. So don't be alarmed if it keeps asking you. Alright, and then it asks if you want to check for designer updates. I'm going to hit OK. And then it's going to prompt you as far as auto update overrides, yada yada. I'm going to choose yes. And I'm going to choose OK. And it's kind of weird updates, and so I'm just, or prompts, and so I'm just going to go and click on through them. Now with the packages, I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to give me a list of packages that can be updated. And it's then going to say, do you want to wait? This has been consistent with other configurations like this. I'm going to go ahead and check all of them. I'm going to choose yes. So it's going to update the packages now. Alright, so after the package updates, we're going to go ahead and hit yes to restart Designer. And then Designer is going to come back up for us again. Once it comes back up, we are going to hopefully be able to see the 4.8.2 upgrade option. And we'll update there, then we'll restart again. And possibly another restart. So, such is the life of the patching, but we will be done shortly. Alright, so it's asking us to check for designer updates once it comes back up, and package updates. Now I'm going to choose to auto update, and we get the prompt for 482. Alrighty, so the update went well. It's time to restart. If you ever wonder what the next step is, try restarting. It's a bad joke, I know. Alright. So once this finishes coming up, we should be golden as far as generating our identity our identity management engine container. It's a lot of words bumped into one. I guess it's not one. But, so on to our next steps. We'll let that finish coming up. Alright. So it shouldn't have any more pieces to do. Alright. Okay. Let's alright, let me just double check the path on my side. Alright. Your IGA containers 482. Alright. Sudo cp mnt containers, and then we're going to .8.2. Let's try. Alright, so I had my path off. This should be copying it now. Alright. So we see that the containers are now there. So I copied it from my local box into my virtual box, and now we're going to extract it. So it should be extracting. Oh, I forgot the V to see it in verbose. Alright, so our next steps should be to install the Docker service. We could have done that previously. So in fact, let's do a new window. We'll just go ahead and get started now. So I'm copying the command out and pasting it. Where I thought I was. Gotta paste. Let's try it one more time. Copy. Paste. Huh, that's odd. Let's check our settings here. I thought I enabled this. There we go. Okay. So we're doing a initial install of some prerequisites. So we'll go ahead and put those in. Choose to continue. Then our next command is going to do a sudo command to add a key. This is all documented off of the Docker's website for an install on Ubuntu. And that should be in your notes as well, so that's a good reference to use. Our point in this training is not to teach Docker, it's not to get you up to speed on all the components, it's just to get you up installed and running for Identity Manager. Alright. So the containers is there. These are all the containers. So while we're waiting for that install, going through the containers, we've got an SSPR, which is a self-service password reset. Got a remote loader container, Postgres, OSP. Remote loader container is to run a shim on a non-identity manager engine box, where the shim can run, such as a Windows box, without the engine needing to be on it. And so we'd install a remote loader. The two would communicate with the engine, and then the shim would be local to the box, such as the AD driver DLL, and it could then connect to Active Directory to do the communication it needs to. The OSP is an OAuth piece to help the different systems communicate. iManager is a management piece running on top of Apache. The IDM conf generator is what's used to help build out your silent install scripts. We'll be using that in just a minute. Our identity utils, that I haven't played with before, so I'll give an update as needed for that. And then the identity reporting is to take your data and generate reports. And the Identity Manager engine is what we're going to be installing. And the identity application, that's going to be your UI interface running on Apache to help handle roles, resources, and workflows. And then your form renderer, I believe that's dealing with form IO. And your fan out agent is generally dealing with pushing. It's kind of like a remote loader, except it's pushing the same changes to multiple endpoints at a time. So one example might be you're pushing a user to multiple Unix servers at the same time, updating their password and other information. So rather than having a driver for each endpoint, you have one driver to handle multiple endpoints. And then last of all is the ActiveMQ. I haven't worked much with ActiveMQ, but from my understanding it is doing the message bus for you as far as the messages that are communicated from each of the different containers. So that's a high overview. Some of it may not be 100% accurate, as these components are newly broken out, but we'll update as information comes available. Alright, I'm going to close that. Now we went ahead and ran for the initial components that we needed. We need to run the curl command. Let's see if I can do it without breaking my documentation. Alright, need to copy that out. So this is all part of the documentation. Grabs the key. We can then run the sudo apt key for the repository, I believe. And then we can go ahead and, with the repository, install Docker. And it's going to install the latest version. Let's see. Command not found. Probably helps if I don't have that leading dot there from my documentation. There we go. Alright, so that's going to update from the repository. And once we have that updated, we're going to do another update. Oh, that's adding the repository, sorry. Should have read a little bit. Alright, so just double checking that we have everything, and then we'll go ahead and install Docker. Alright. And once that completes, we'll run a sudo docker run hello world command. It's going to go and create a quick instance of a Docker container, just to make sure that Docker looks like it's healthy and working. Alright, with that completed, we're going to run the hello world. It's pulling that down, loading it, and we see that looks to be working correctly. We can run a docker or a sudo ps, shows that we don't have any current containers running. And we can also do a version to show that we are on the what release we're currently on. Alright, so now we're ready to start the pieces as far as installing the Identity Manager engine. I've already installed the containers. Well, sorry, I've already put them into the location that we need. We need to give the server a static IP address. I don't believe we've done that yet. So to do that, we're going to go down to the system, settings, and we're going to go to the network. We're going to configure it for manual, and we're going to put in alright, nice and secure, right? Let's see, so our DNS. Alright. I'm going to apply that. For giggles, we'll stop the network and restart it, but we'll end up restarting the box as well. We're going to do a sudo nano and modify the etc host file. We're going to put in the IP address. Alright. Now we're going to write that out. We're going to exit. I always like to cat it out. Looks good. And now we need to also modify it. But I always like to look at the host name as well. It should be fine. Okay, the host name is fine. So now I'm going to restart. Now I was using it 6. Just I think it's simple. You don't have to guess what distribution is using what keyword to do a restart. Init 6 is generally universal, at least from what I've seen. That's just telling the system to restart. You've got the different stages within it for bringing up. Usually init 5 is a GUI. Init 3 or init 4 is usually command prompt only. So alright, so with that coming up, one thing to note that if you're doing this on a different distro where you're not using Ubuntu, it is possible that Docker won't start up automatically, so you may have to run systemctl start Docker. Alright. Just double checking a few of my settings here. Alright, looks like we're ready to proceed. So as I talked about previously, we need to build out the silent install properties file. we need to also create a location for our identity manager engine to reside. So I'm going to create a new directory structure that is specific for that container. So I'm going to call it IDM1. So we see that's there. We're going to go into the containers directory, and we're going to run the command to load up the configurator. So we've got we're doing a load on that. That's loading it into memory. And with it loaded into memory, we can now, it's weird that it's keeping that because I'm not highlighting it. Got that that little icon there that's coming over as this big O. Alright, so if you notice, we're doing a sudo docker run and we're doing an RM. That's automatically going to remove the Docker image once it's completed. And we are running the from the IGA IDM path, IDM1 path, that is where that container's config is going to be. And we're basically mapping the IGA IDM1 to the containers/config directory. And you'll see why we are doing that. So I'm going to hit enter here. And what this is going to do is it's going to go ahead and launch up that container. We're currently getting prompts from within that container as far as where do we want to install our silent.properties file. By default, it's the config. So in the container, it's the /config directory. On Ubuntu, it is the /IGA/IDM1. So we've got that mapping, if you will. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter to keep the default. We are not going to use Kubernetes at this time, so I'll keep the default and hit no. We are going to say the advanced edition functionality, which is the default is Y, so we're going to hit enter again. We're going to choose option 1 for the identity manager engine. That's the silent.properties file that it's going to be generating is for the engine. And it's going to prompt you again. So if you made a mistake, you can hit 1 to remove that. But otherwise you can hit enter to continue. Alright, yes, we want to put a common password. So I'm going to hit enter and I'm going to put in that password. Alright, now the IP address, it's grabbing a different one that I have. I need to make sure I'm putting in the correct one. Otherwise I'll have issues. Alright. Now it's asking an option, are we creating a new identity vault? Yes, we are. So I'm going to choose option 1. And then I'm going to hit enter again to confirm. And it's asking me for the tree name. I like it in uppercase. Servers.system is the context for the server. Notice it's dot notation. You don't have to necessarily worry about that unless you want your server objects located somewhere else. The cn equals admin, comma o equals sa, comma o equals system. That's the default context of the admin user. To leave that, you'd put it in. Notice it's in comma notation. I think the comma notation is more of a reference of helping you as an administrator know what user you're going to log in as, and that you would use generally a common notation, as it's going to be an LDAP based system generally where you're doing your configuration. That's my assumption on it. Alright, so your certificate authority keys 4096, gonna keep that. P384, keep that. And the 10 years, we'll go ahead and keep that default. That is for the certificate authority. And then this is the path for the eDirectory database structure. So the varop novel eDirectory structure and the database dib location. Now this is the port 524. That's the default port. If you're installing multiple identity manager engines, so you have multiple eDirectory boxes communicating back and forth, you're not going to want them to share the same port if their container is running on the same host box. Now you could change the configuration of your container if you chose to, so that you're not using the host IP, but currently we are using the host IP. But I'm only planning on a single engine at this time, so I'm going to keep it at 524. But at most cases you're going to have multiple engines out there, so you may want to do naming such as IDM1, everything has a preceding 1 in front of the port, so it'd be 1524. For LDAP it'd be 1636 rather than 636, etc., etc. And then like server 2, IDM2, you might have a 2 in front of it. So just it gives some normalcy, and you're not having a port confusion situation, if that makes sense. Alright, so that is the conf configuration path, and I'm going to change this just because it is my preference. I like the driver set to be a particular way if possible. I like the capital D, capital S. Other than that, it's pretty vanilla. And then your silent.properties file is configured now. In fact, if we go to IDM1, we can see that. Alright, so I went ahead and listed that out after a quick pause, and we see that the silent.properties is in fact there. We can cat that out. And if we made a mistake, we can just go and manually change that if need be. You could, rather than going through and redoing the configuration, you could copy this out to your second identity manager server, like an IDM2 path, change what you needed to, and then be ready to move forward there. Alright. For the most part, this is for a new install of the tree, and so second server going into the same tree would be a little bit different. So you would need to go through adding it to an existing partition, so it would be a little bit different. You'd need to look at the differences. So create it, and then you could use it. But from going from one environment to another, you could just take this silent.properties file and put it to your production server, and all you have to do is change some key pieces, keeping it very consistent, very easy, and saving a lot of time. Alright, so I'm going to go back into the containers, just double checking my notes, making sure I didn't skip over anything. Alright. So next we need to load up the identity manager engine. So currently, by pasting that in there, it's starting to load up the engine into memory. We should see it start scrolling here with that. There we go. So that's going to take a quick second. Alright, so that completed. So now we just need to start it up to point to the silent install file. So we see that we're doing a run with the D, and the network is the host. The name is IDM1, and we're pointing to our volume as being IGA IDM1, pointing to the config, and our silent install file is within this config structure. And let's go ahead and launch it. So it's done, right? Actually, what we want to do now is we want to go under IDM1, and we can go into the IDM directory, and we can go into the log directory, and we can tell the config log. So we see that the NDSD service is done, that it's checking if the server is ready to service requests. That's done. We should be able to see this scroll a bit. And then I'm going to start up a new window. We're going to run sudo docker ps. We see that it's been up for about a minute, and we see that in the log that it's stopping the service. Shows as healthy. We see it starting the service. So the container's up, it's just restarting the service itself. It says it's successfully configured, and then it's restarting the Identity Vault service, which would be eDirectory. Shows up for 2 minutes that it's healthy. So far I haven't seen any issues. Starting the Vault services. And that it started. Alright, so I'm going to Control-C this, and then let's go ahead and check a couple things. We'll do a sudo docker ps. We see that it's running, that it's healthy, it's been up 3 minutes. Now let's go ahead and do a sudo docker exec it idm1 is our container, and we're going to sun as nds. That's the built-in user. Okay, so that worked. Let's type nds manage. Notice I don't need to use sudo, so I'm local to the container. We see that the instance is active, and we can list the replicas on the server, which it should only just show one. It's taking a little longer than I anticipated. Let's do a NDS repair -t, shows the time. Let's do an E for replication. You know, there's only one server, so it's not really going to show anything. we can type NDS trace. We can do a no debug to turn off all the settings. There we go. We have time tags LDAP turned on. So let's go ahead and start up Designer. And then let's also start up the Apache Directory Studio. I believe that is under Downloads. Keep it nice and busy. So this is on the container itself, right? Yep. It's on the container itself. It's utilization. All right. Okay, so we need a connection for LDAP. So we're going to click on the plus. Let's expand all. Here we go, new connection. It's been a minute. Alright, so I'm going to call this IDM1. We're going to do 636. I didn't change the ports. It is. And I'm always going to trust the certificate. So we made a connection. We're going to use cn equals admin, comma ou equals this equals system. Check authentication, and we're going to hit finish. Alright, so we're connected in. We don't have much here. We have a driver set. We don't have any drivers. We have an SA container with only the admin. We've got a server container with default server-based objects that we would see. So it's a very small configuration that it throws at it. But we're in via LDAP. So even though I check this within Designer, so this is the Designer prompt, it seems to ask me all the time anyway. So I don't know if that's a bug or a feature. Anyway, so it's kind of a joke. But it's kind of a joke because it's been doing it for years. And I don't know if there's a way to actually have it stop prompting you. So it is up. So you can always hit no as far as checking for updates. And we are now into Designer, and I can hit X to cancel the welcome. Now this will be part of the next course, is getting into the Designer, but we'll help show that you can connect into it. So the identity vault I'm going to call tst, and I'm just going to call it IM tree. Alright, for the test environment, for the IM tree, and we're going to specify the IP address. This is also LDAP context. I'm going to choose to save my password. It's a test environment. I accept that. And all I can do now is hit finish. It's bringing in a default email or notification collection and default schema. Alright, now if I right click on this and go to properties, one thing I can do is I can add my servers. So I can browse to my server, choose IAM as my server object. I can hit OK, I can hit apply, and then I can also go to edit and I can confirm my version. So this is where it's going out and doing a live check of the version, because you want your designer version and your product version to be the same for the engine, and so that's up to date. Now the eDirectory version shows 8.8, and I know that's wrong. It goes out and checks and it sees 9.2.3, it updates it as such. I hit OK, I apply that. Then you notice the little asterisk up here as well. That's also indicating that a save can be performed. And usually there's a little icon for saving, but I'm going to do we can do a Control S or a Shift Control S. So let's do a save all. Now one other thing we can do, so this is the identity vault itself. It represents the directory server. It doesn't represent identity manager as far as the driver set or the drivers. And so we're going to right click and do a live and do an import. We're going to browse, go to security, and then we see our driver set, and we're going to hit OK. Now underneath the driver set there's no drivers. Just the driver set. So we do have a statistics job. We do have some attributes as far as trace log limit size. These are all default values, but we'll go ahead and hit import. It gives a message about direct XML linkages. You can ignore that for the most part. Then you can do the Control Shift S to go ahead and save that change. Now you are up to date with your designer with what the current default configuration is when you do an initial install. So you've got a blank slate. You can go ahead and pull in different data. So let's say your HR system you're receiving a CSV file for. You can hit next. We're not going to do password synchronization. We're not going to do manage system information right now. We're just doing pretty much a vanilla delimited text driver. My user containers data users and data groups. I don't have those yet, so I'll need to create those. And I'm going to call this HR. And it's wanting a path of var netiq IDM users input for my data. So right now I'm just going to leave it as default. We're not going to connect to remote loader. And the field delimiter I'm going to say is a pipe. Alright, and the field names I'll leave those for now. Alright, so this could be a CSV of your HR data coming in. And then some additional information you may have. Maybe a business process driver, a null service driver that could be taking data and converting it or generating additional data you need for downstream systems or handling your lifecycle events. We'll talk more about that in an upcoming session. But we'll call this business logic. And we'll finish that. Now you have a business logic driver. Some other drivers you can do, SAP, you can do Active Directory, you can do to an external mail service such as Notes, GroupWise. Your Exchange email system would be part of the Active Directory driver. You can do connect to most any LDAP based directory, iPlanet, Netscape, Oracle Directory, Active Directory, Atom. Your databases, you can connect to most any database. Your cloud, you've got Azure, you've got ServiceNow, and you've got SOAP, you've got a REST, and you've got a generic app. You can help build out your own driver and service if need be. So look through that, explore, see what's out there, see what makes sense for connected systems. Then of course you'll want to talk to Micro Focus as far as licensing and whatnot. There are some freeware drivers out there that you can look for. There is a Micro Focus community that is a great source of information. Alright, so we'll start diving into understanding the flow of data, how to configure policies, the flow of data, data mapping, etc., and some good resources and pieces to get you up and going. So hopefully this has been helpful to get a system up and going from the ground up, to get it into a lab, into an environment, and we've done it all in, outside of pausing for the install or whatnot, active time of actually configuring it outside of waiting for files to be copied or whatnot. You're talking about an hour and a half, probably about 2 hours with file copies and whatnot. So not bad time for you to have an environment up and going in a lab environment. The biggest thing that you don't have possibly is the Identity Manager product itself. If you're not already familiar with it, if you're brand new to it, you're going to have to go and open up a call to Micro Focus or to request a demo as talked about earlier, so that you can download that. So just as a review, you can go and type in so I typed in NetIQ IDM demo into my browser, click on Trial Identity Manager. Go ahead and click that and register for a free trial, and it'll be able to let you download the binary. And the biggest thing is that if you can get an account to get to the patches area, or if you can request, hey, I want access to the 482 container, then you're golden. You should be fine with following these instructions. Maybe a little bit different with the 480 container. I haven't tried these instructions on it. These are primarily for 482. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully you enjoy getting dirty with Identity Manager, and that you can grow your skill set and start implementing better processes for your organization, better automation, and hopefully free up some tasks for some more important security-based operations and reviewing of data, rather than having to handle manual, okay, I've got this dirty data that I need to handle, or hey, I've got this data over here of onboarding these users, and it takes up lots of time per se. Hopefully you can cut down automation in that. Hopefully you can drive your business so that you're more identity centric, and so that you have a better security, a better awareness of accounts that are authenticating, accounts that are synchronizing. And we'll be talking more about some of the best practices that you can do to help solidify and maintain your environment. So cheers, cheerio. I'm not actually from that side of the pond, but do have a lot of colleagues that are, and I love the term cheers. So take care and have a great day.